Here we go. This is the problem with this podium. It's broken. Well, there's plenty of tape on it. All right, well, I mean, we can get through. It's okay for this one, for one article. Yeah, I've already lost it. Yeah. That's okay. I can survive. Oh, just tighten it up? That's fine. Yep. is 7:00. Let me go chase. All right, we're running a little late, just so you know. Okay, I'm going to start. So please take your seats for those of you in the room. I'd like to welcome you to Litchfield School District Deliberative Session. My name is John Regan. I live at 9 Chasebrook Circle. I'm your school district moderator, and I'll preside over this evening's meeting. Mr. Philip Reed, right over here raising his hand, is my assistant moderator. A few administrative announcements. State law prohibits smoking anywhere in school grounds. Please do not light up. Restrooms are located just past the auditorium on your right. Food and drink are not allowed on the auditorium floor. Water, okay. There are no concession sales. I think I did see a table of snacks out there in the auditorium. You're welcome to browse by that. As a reminder, it's against school policy to leave flyers on vehicles parked on school property. Please don't do that. Okay, before we begin the meeting, please all stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Jett, would you introduce your board? Jetty, sorry. Is it Jetty?
As long as you're not calling to sell me something, I'll answer to Jet. It's good. So thank you. So I'm Mike Jetty. I'm the superintendent of schools. And sitting here at the front table, we have Brian Burke, who is the chair of the school board, and Christina Harrison, who is the vice chair of the school board. And Tina also served as a member of the team that negotiated the contract. Also down front is Michelle Flynn, who is our I don't know what role you have tonight, but keeping minutes for the meeting, so she's minute taker at the moment. And other board members in the room? Not yet. I know there are some still checking in out front.
Okay. And we don't have a budget committee tonight. And that's it. Oh, we do have a statement that was handed out by the budget committee. You'll have an opportunity to review that when you checked in, I suspect. This is a standard deliberative session. We'll go over the moderator's rules. We'll discuss the warrant. And that's it. Meeting closure after that. Okay, so moderator's rules. Litchfield is operating under what is known as Senate Bill 2 procedures. This means that our function this evening is to review and discuss the warrant articles that have been presented here today and for us to vote on by official ballot on Election Day on October 29th. At the special election. Polls at Campbell High School will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. According to state law, town and school district meetings are run by the moderator's rules. This means that the moderator sets the ground rules for the meeting. However, a law also allows you to overrule the moderator's rules by approving a motion to do so by simple majority vote. For this deliberative session, the moderator will read each warrant article and recognize the sponsor to speak about it. Then the moderator will open the floor for discussion. When you come to ask a question or discuss an article at any microphone here today, please clearly state your name and street address so that the clerk can hear you. If a voter wishes to propose an amendment, I'm going to read all the articles even though that may not apply. If a voter wishes to propose an amendment to an article, he or she must have the amendment moved and seconded before it can be discussed. If we make no amendments to these warrant articles, then they will appear in the ballot as you see them tonight. If we do make amendments to these warrant articles, then they will appear in the ballot as amended. Amendments to warrant articles must be handed to the moderator in writing. Index cards are available here at the front. Note that an amendment cannot change the primary subject described in the article. The maker of a motion to amend an article will have the first opportunity to speak to it. Each proposed amendment will be brought to closure before any other amendment is discussed. At the CHA's auditorium, non-voters may sit in the corner to the right as you enter the auditorium. All non-voters, please please raise your hand. Great. That means everybody here in that section, in this middle section, and over here are all voters, correct? Good. Okay. As you enter the building tonight, the ballot clerks gave each registered voter a sheet. No, they didn't. We didn't have any sheets to hand out tonight. Only those people who are on the checklist or qualified voters are permitted to vote. We're not voting tonight to amend an article. If the moderator receives a complaint or notices a non-voter voting or speaking out of turn, if you will, then he will require the non-voter to leave the auditorium. The moderator must conduct a secret yes-no ballot when 5 voters make a written request prior to a voice, hand, standing, or division vote on the article. We'll talk about that later. The moderator must conduct a secret yes-no ballot when 7 or more voters challenge any vote to amend an article immediately after the vote is declared by the moderator and before any of the business is begun. We'll talk about that later. Approval of all warrant article amendments at the deliberative session shall be by simple majority vote. A voice vote will be the primary method of voting. Active campaigning for your favorite warrant article handouts, standing in line with signs, is allowed in the hall outside the auditorium. Active campaigning within the auditorium other than to discuss an article when invited to do so is prohibited. The deliberative session is a forum at which we ask questions. More importantly, it's a place for debate. Proper respect and decorum will be expected at all times. Every effort will be made to give recognition to all wishing to speak. If you want to speak, then you must come to a microphone to do so. Board members, if you're speaking as a board member discussing an article, you may remain on stage or in front here. If If you're offering your own opinion as a citizen, then please move to the floor microphones. All those who speak are to keep their remarks pertinent to the motion. No negative motions will be in order. No personal attacks will be permitted. No profanity will be permitted. All speakers will direct their remarks to the moderator. When a question is asked, the moderator will call upon the appropriate person to respond to that question. The moderator will allow one follow-up question when others are waiting to speak and will not allow running discussions. A motion to call the question and stop discussion must be properly seconded before it can be considered. Voters who speak to an article may not immediately call the question in order to stop discussion about it. A motion to table an article will not be in order unless it is to table until a specific time and place before the close of the meeting. A motion to reconsider or restrict reconsideration of an article which, after discussion is closed, will not be in order unless seconded and approved. Reconsidered articles must be discussed and closure reached before the end of this meeting. A motion to adjourn or recess will not be accepted until all warrant articles have been discussed. Members of boards and committees, members and voters will refrain from using acronyms. About halfway through, no, we're not going to do that one. Done. 40 of them. So, first point of order. It is your prerogative to permit non-voters to speak at this meeting. It has been customary to allow employees, council, and non-registered residents to speak at these meetings. If it is your wish to continue to do so, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Okay. Here we go. We have one article on the ballot. It's Article 1. I'm going to read it. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Litchfield School District and the Litchfield Education Association, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing level. For year 2019 to 2020, $256,587 estimated increase. For years 2020 to 2021, $294,278 estimated increase. For 2021 and 22, $303,872 estimated increase. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $256,587 for fiscal 2020, each sum representing the additional cost, such sum representing the additional cost attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels. The estimated tax impact is 28 cents. This is recommended by the school board, a vote of 5-0-0. It's recommended by the budget committee with a vote of 6-2-0. Mr. Jetty, did you want to speak to the article first?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So we've prepared a PowerPoint. I'm going to walk everybody through the agreement so that you understand the question that's in front of people. So just a couple of procedural pieces. So the voters should know that we petitioned for the special election with the courts, and the court has granted that permission for us to hold the meeting today. So we did go through the legal process that the board had available to them after the vote failed in March, in order to ask for a special meeting to reconsider a completely different agreement. The other thing is, for tonight, it's important that the public understand that there cannot be amendments made to the article. There's one article tonight. It's just the collective bargaining agreement, and the law relative to collective bargaining agreements is very clear that there can't be changes or amendments made by the public. So we're going to go through what this is, and then your opportunity to have say on it is at the polls on October 29th. And if I may, we do have, so Tara Hirschberger is here in the front. She's another member of the school board. Liz McDonald is a member of the school board and is also present in the back. And then member Rob Myers was not able to be here tonight because he's coaching soccer in another school. All right, so basically we had the vote before the the ballot before the voters back in March, and that agreement failed. So it was not supported by the voters. And immediately after that happened, I can tell you that the board and the teachers engaged in some pretty deep reflection of what had happened with that agreement, very careful review of the factors that were related to why it failed. That was based on a lot of feedback that was received. So we listened to voters, we listened to the budget committee that had weighed in on that, and we took all of that under advisement in terms of where we were at that point in time. We then met with teachers and established that we had a shared concern about the impact that that was going to have on our teaching staff. We were afraid that we were going to lose teachers over the summer, and that's exactly what happened. We had teachers leave for other districts. We were concerned about the impact it would have on school morale if teachers came back without an agreement in place, and then the impact that that morale would have on students. And so based on all of those factors, the teams met to see if there was any common ground that could be identified. Would we be able to even get to another agreement? And we negotiated from March until late May, even early June, trying to get to that common ground. And they were hard negotiations because the teams knew that what was being asked by the voters and what was being asked by the budget committee was going to be difficult to come to an agreement. But after hard negotiations, we did reach an agreement that we feel will attract and retain quality staff going forward. And so that's what we're here tonight to talk about, is that new agreement. I'm going to start by telling you that this new agreement costs $260,377 less than the agreement that failed in March. And this is part of the reason why we petitioned the court, because we shaved so much money out of the failed agreement that we really felt the opportunity to bring it forth to the voters and let the voters decide if this was a fair agreement was worth asking for that permission, and so we plugged ahead. A reminder that the March agreement had the following, the cost that you see projected up there, so it was a $1.1 million agreement. And the tax impact of that was 43 cents per thousand, and the voters said no to that. They said it was too much money. So we made reductions of $260,377, and that shaved 15 cents off the tax impact. So it was a reduction of 23.35% of the initial ask. And that brings us to the new agreement that you just heard mentioned in the article. You can see the 3-year costs, and it costs $854,737, reducing the tax impact to 28 cents per thousand. So that's that shaving 15 cents per thousand off the original ask. And we feel very strongly that by everybody working together, teachers, school board members, we were able to shave over $250,000 off the cost of the failed agreement, and we have a completely different agreement to present to the voters tonight and again at the polls on October 29th. The LEA negotiation team that came back to the table were the same 6 members that negotiated the original agreement, so they certainly understood all of the conversations that had taken place starting in September to reach the agreement that was presented to voters in March, and then they were engaged in the hard negotiations to get an agreement settled in June. And the school board members who had negotiated the original agreement also committed to return back to the table, and we put in hours of time negotiating, trying to get to a good situation and an agreement that was fair to all sides. 2 goals. The first goal was to attract and retain excellent teachers, and the second goal was to change to a consumer-driven healthcare plan. I'm going to talk for a second about goal 1. So one thing to point out is that we lose more than just a teacher when somebody leaves our district. That teacher takes with them all of the professional development that the taxpayers have invested into that individual. So all of the learning techniques, strategies, disappear when that individual goes somewhere else, and we have to start all over again with the replacement teacher. We lose the mentoring that's been invested in that individual to help them be the best teacher they can be for our students. We lose college credit reimbursements that have been given to that teacher under the collective bargaining, so they take those college credits to another district. We lose any personal materials that they've invested in their own classroom because they're not school district materials. They take them with them to another district. We lose the knowledge they have gained over our curriculum, over our programs, over the materials that we have in our classrooms. So all of that institutional knowledge parts with the teacher who leaves. Organizational knowledge, how to get something done, who to go to, how does the organization operate, all of that also disappears when somebody leaves. And finally, and probably most important, we lose the relationships that they've built with the students. We lose the relationships they've built with their colleagues working in professional learning communities. We lose the relationships with parents and with administrators. Those things also disappear, and we have to go back to square one when we bring a new employee on. And so it's really important to the board that we attract and retain teachers in the district. In the failed agreement, there were three things we were trying to do to keep people. So the first was to maintain a competitive salary scale. We wanted to make sure that the agreement we had in place would attract people to come to Litchfield and keep people in Litchfield. We also wanted to restore steps that were missed in 2012 to 2014 when there was either no agreement or when the parties had agreed with the down economy to not accept a raise, and so we wanted to restore that. And the final thing was to increase the longevity payments because we have many experienced teachers in district and we want to make sure that we keep them. So that was another key strategy for us, was to pay attention to longevity so that they stay here. But the renegotiated agreement in the brighter blue screen tells you that we couldn't do all of that. So how did we shave $250,000 out? Well, we did our best with a competitive salary scale, but it's not the same one that we had brought forward before. We decided to make cost of living adjustments, so there were COLAs that were made to all teachers on the scale, but that was in lieu of the makeup steps that had been afforded to some members of the bargaining unit. So we sort of had to say, that just costs too much money, and so we were not able to retain that going forward. And we made a slight increase to longevity payments. So that's how we were able to shave the $250,000 out, by not doing the makeup steps and not giving as much longevity at the top step. So why is it important for us to maintain a competitive salary scale? Well, we want to make sure that we get new teachers competitively. Teachers are right out of college. They have college loans. They're looking at districts. I can tell you the number of times this summer that we would offer somebody a position and they would say, okay, can I think about it overnight, and I've got another offer. And they were calling another superintendent to say, what can you do? I've got this offer in Litchfield. Can you do something for me? Now, we're all bound by collective bargaining agreements, but depending on those agreements, there can be some flexibility in there. So we want to make sure that we're as competitive as we can. We want to hire early and make sure that we get the best teachers that we can for the dollars that we have. So it's important that our salary schedule attract people in. And also, we want to retain excellent teachers, excellent existing teachers. I can tell you a quick story. We had 2 staff members who left this summer. One who went to another local school district, so we're not talking relocating, selling the house, moving. I mean, they stayed in their same home. Instead of pointing the car south to Litchfield, they pointed it in a different direction, and the increase the person made was $13,000. So, you know, when you're trying to feed your family and pay your own bills, that's real money. And so somebody who sees that they can obtain that kind of a salary increase by switching districts will do it. But then they take all the things that were on that first slide with them. The PD, the learning, the institutional knowledge is now gone, and they're working in another district. And I'm not counting somebody who, we had teachers who left to become an administrator in another district. We would expect there to be a salary increase. They're also going to work many more days. But, you know, that's not what I'm counting here. I'm saying a teacher who left working a school year contract, went to another district for a school year contract, and made $13,000 more. And that happened more than once with teachers for us. So again, this is why the board felt the urgency to renegotiate and come back to the voters. So I talk about steps. Let me explain. Basically, step 1 for us is $39,696. That's the pay that we pay for a teacher right out of college, beginning step. And if they stay with us each year, they earn a step, they advance up the ladder, if you would, to step 15 bachelor degree, where they're paid $60,866. So basically, you can think of a step, step 1 being the entry level, and you can think of those steps as being roughly years of experience. Now, we have people who are many steps behind because of agreements that haven't passed in past history. But by and large, that's where those steps occur. And somebody going to another district makes up those steps. So they're placed on the proper step based on their experience in another district, hence the reason they're making that kind of an increase when they move somewhere else. The other thing the public should understand is that there are 6 different lanes. So you have steps based on longevity, but you also have lanes that a person can be in based on degree status. So somebody with a bachelor's degree is in one lane and can move 15 steps along. Somebody with a master's degree is in a different lane and can move 15 steps along. So basically there are 6 lanes and 15 steps that people advance through. Oh, and one thing to point out too, and actually to give credit to Len Lathrop in the back, because he and I had a conversation on the radio show about this, and steps are not guaranteed. So in order for a teacher to make step, they have to receive adequate evaluations. So it's not just you've been here another year and you make a step. You have to earn the step by receiving evaluations that show that you've performed the job the way it needs to be done. And if there's a reason that you haven't made that performance level, then the step can be frozen. So in terms of staying competitive, in year 1, we're increasing the starting salary from $39,303 up to $39,696, the number that you saw on the previous screen. In year 2, it will go up to $40,291, and in year 3, it'll go up to $40,997. And that's, again, how we are staying competitive with our brand new right out of college teachers. We're also making cost of living increases to retain staff. And so in year 1, we're doing a salary step with a 1% cost of living increase to that salary step. In year 2, it's making the salary step with a 1.5% cost of living. And in year 3, it's a salary step with a 1.75% cost of living increase, so that we're honoring the people who are staying with us with that cost of living increase as they're also making a step along the salary schedule. So the total costs end up being the amounts that you saw. Now, these aren't exactly the amounts in the warrant. This is the salary portion only, and then the rest of it are the other negotiated cost items. In terms of increasing longevity stipends, step 15 is the top step of the salary scale. And we have an agreement that says if somebody has been with us 15 to 19 years, with the last 5 in Litchfield, so they need to have been a Litchfield teacher at least the last 5 or more, then we'll increase the stipend from $1,500 to $1,590 in year 3 of the agreement. So again, it's a slight increase in longevity in the 3rd year of this 3-year agreement by $90. And if somebody has 20 plus years of experience with the last 5 in Litchfield, the current longevity stipend is $2,500, and that'll also go up by $90 in year 3 to $2,590. So all of the longevity increases are backed off until year 3. There are no longevity increases in year 1 or year 2. And so the total 3-year cost of longevity ends up being $55,224 estimated, which adds to the numbers to get you to the warrant amount. All right, so goal number 2. Goal number 2 for us is better use of healthcare dollars by shifting to a consumer-driven plan. So currently, in the current year that we're in, we, because we started negotiating after the point that we would have had to make a switch in insurance, right? So you want to do a shift in insurance really in the springtime and summer to make sure that employees are ready for the start of the year. The parties recognized there was no window of time for us to make a shift for the current year that we're coming into. So the negotiated agreement says, let's maintain the existing green and red plans. And basically, we're not making any adjustment to the cost shares. So green is currently paid with 82% of the school district paying the cost and 18% being paid by the employee. And the red plan is 83% paid by the district and 17% paid by the employee. So we decided to leave that in place for the first year of the 3-year agreement, the current year. However, starting next year, we're going to shift from the green and red plans to the yellow and yellow with choice plans. And I'm going to talk a little bit with you about those, but basically, we're also going to shift change the percentages so that there are declining costs of those plans from the taxpayer point of view. So the yellow plan with choice, we will be, the district will be paying 88% and the employee 12%. But in the second year of the agreement, that will go down to an 87-13 split. So there's a 1% shift from the school district taxpayer side to the employee side. And the yellow plan, which is a slightly different version of it, the cost shares are 90-10 and 89-11. So again, there's that 1% shift that ends up occurring with the yellow plan. Let me talk about, so I've used all these colors to describe the plans. I'm going to compare two plans, which is the green plan, the current one that most of our employees take, with the yellow with choice plan, which is the plan that we predict most employees will select when given the choice. So the green plan has no deductible, and there's a $30 copay when somebody goes to the doctor, whereas the yellow with choice plan has a $1,000 deductible, and the copay is zero. So instead of doing the copay, you're paying toward that deductible, and so it's a different way of looking at the plans. You can see the premiums side by side are different. So the yellow plan with choice is about $700 cheaper than, or less expensive than the green plan that we currently have. And when we shift from paying 82% of the green to paying 88% of the yellow, you can see that the cost to the member shifts a little bit, whereas the cost to the school district stays about neutral between the 2 years. Now, if the teachers certainly look at this and say, well, yes, it's going to cost me less as the member. However, I'm also exposed at $1,000 deductible amount. So that was all part of the conversation and why salary increases came along and so forth, so that the goal was to make sure in the first years we made the shift that we kept people as whole as we could with the costs. But there's other benefits that go with the yellow plan. So first of all, we predict that there will be lower rates over time. When we get on a consumer-driven plan and when employees have more skin in the game in terms of the use of their healthcare dollars, we believe that that will drive costs down, and we should see lower rates occur over time. The other thing is that school care is estimating to us that nearly 90% of districts and towns, so remember school care also covers town employees, not just school district employees, and so they're predicting that 90% will be on the yellow plan this year. So the green plan is largely disappearing. I think last year it was closer to 60%, and it shifted to 90%. So most districts and towns are headed in this direction, and that's why the parties were able to talk about this and reach an agreement. There are incentives for healthy lifestyle choices that are embedded in the plan. It gives greater control over healthcare dollars to the employee, because by being a consumer-driven plan, they need to think about how they're using the dollars that they have allocated to them. And the other thing is that the Cadillac tax, which is still current law, I know there's news articles out there that there's consideration of repealing the Cadillac tax, but it hasn't happened yet. And so the Cadillac tax, which is set to come into play in 2022, will be avoided by shifting over to the yellow plan, whereas, and the amounts that we would be exposed to would be much less than they are under the green plan. So all of these are factors the board had in thinking about what was the best plan to offer for employees. So in year one, we're predicting an insurance savings of $511. In year two, we're estimating it to be $2,184, and in year three, we're estimating $19,162. Now, that's because we have to predict which plans people would choose based on what they're currently choosing, and so this is just an estimate, but it's our best estimate that it would be a $21,858 cost savings to the taxpayers, potentially more or less with what happens with insurance rates, with plans people select, et cetera. So it's a little bit difficult, but that's our best estimate on the cost savings that would go with it. So in sum, the major cost items in year one to get to the $256,587 amount that we're raising and appropriating is the step plus 1% cost of living and then the insurance savings. In year two, It's the step plus 1.5%, plus a COLA, the 1.5% COLA and the insurance savings. And in year 3, it's the step plus 1.75% COLA and the insurance savings. So that's how we were able to land with a dollar amount, $854,737. That's $250,000, over $250,000 less expensive than the agreement that failed in March. There's also some new contract language that we're pretty excited about, and we, again, are hoping to get the support of the voters. We renegotiated language about the school opening date. I know there have been a lot of talk in the community about starting later in the year, and especially the impact that has going late into June. So there is new language for us that, that explains how the school year can start. We have defined the workday in a different way, but we think this will really enhance the experience for students, families, and our teachers. And we've established a co-curricular stipend review committee to take a look at the way our coaches and advisors are compensated, so that we can make some adjustments there and better use the dollars that are allocated to us. So the question that was asked is here on the screen. That's on the paper printout that you have. That's the question that will be on the ballot. And we just want people to consider how much we invest in our teachers as you think about this. So everybody who left took with them that PD, workshop, conferences, courses, mentoring, and support. Plus, think about how much we invest in our teachers and care about our teachers. The hours they work outside of the workday, the things they purchase for their own classrooms to make it come alive beyond what taxpayers provide, the help they provide at various school events, the parent communication that is done outside of school hours and to make sure that parents stay in the loop, the relationships they build with colleagues, and then the volunteering that they do in the community. It's all pretty substantial, and the reason why having a teacher's agreement is important to us. And the investment in knowledge pays the best interest. So that concludes the presentation. I just want to check and make sure that I haven't missed any key points that we want to make sure we drive home. Okay, great. The only other thing that I just want to say before I step away from the podium is that on Election Day, it's going to look a little bit different. So if you're accustomed to coming to the polls, you sort of check in with the ballot clerks when you arrive, and you're handed a ballot that you then will pencil in a bubble sheet kind of thing, and then you feed it into a machine, and the machine counts the ballot and records the votes. We're not using that process this time because the cost of those ballots is actually pretty high. So to save that cost with a one-question ballot, you see the sample on the back of the sheet that was handed out. You're just going to simply check the yes or the no box. So you have to make your mark on there very clearly so that the human beings who are going to read those know how you intended to vote. So I think their goal is to separate them into two piles. There'll be a yes pile and a no pile, and then they'll count those twice to make sure that we have an accurate count of how people voted. So, so when you come to vote, please understand that you're going to have to check in, check that ballot, hand it to the moderator who will then put it into a ballot box, and then check back out again. You have to see another ballot clerk in order to check out. So it's the same process you would follow, except it's not a machine. It's going to be hand counted and a slightly different checkout process than you're accustomed to. So I think I've covered all the bases on it, and we'll turn it back over.
Do we have any discussion on Article 1? If you do, just come down to the podium and state your name and address, and we'll do our best to answer the question for you.
Jack Shiner, 10 Whittemore Drive. The question I have, which you did not give an answer to, is why you investigated the first ballots got failed. Why did they fail?
So in listening to the voters, we were told the following. It was too much money.
Was it too much money for the teachers, or was it too much money for the schools?
So we were told by the voters it was too much of a tax impact, that we were raising too much money, and that people could not support it because of the impact it would have on their wallets. And that's why the board went back to negotiate and cut the $250,000 out. We were told by the budget committee that it didn't make enough of a cost shift in the insurance because the original agreement had the same cost ratios throughout, and the budget committee wanted to see a shift from the teachers toward the town. And so basically this that shift that you saw with the declining contribution rate was another key sticking point. The budget committee deadlocked on it last time. They voted 4-4, which meant they didn't recommend the teacher agreement to the public. And budget committee members told us that a key thing was the insurance shift that did not occur. So in this agreement, we made that budget shift. And so the cost will shift from the taxpayers to the employee. And we earned a 6-2 vote of the budget committee to recommend it. So in part because we listened to that feedback and made those adjustments in this agreement.
Well, what I hear around rumors and that is the reason it didn't pass is because the school budget was so high. And in the past years, they have used money that was not appropriated to the school for things like, does the people know that all the schools have been paid for? Do they know what happened to the money that was being paid out of the school budget every year to pay for the schools? And I'm sorry to say that more people are upset with the school budget than they are with raises for the teachers. As far as I'm concerned, teachers deserve every bit of more money than what they get right now. In fact, if I had my way, you wouldn't pay any teacher less than $40,000, whether they're new or not.
Well, that's great feedback. Sounds like a vote of support for us with this. And the only piece I can say is that the school board does have a very open and transparent budget process. And, you know, the school budget actually passed. It was the teacher agreement that didn't. And so, but we will begin the process of developing next year's school budget. In fact, we're in that already in the office. It's going to go to the school board in a public session on Saturday the 19th, I think. And so we begin the whole process of developing the school budget, which will be very open and transparent. So folks who have feedback for the board should get that to the board in the next 2 weeks, because they're going to be right up to their eyebrows in budget development very quickly. Yeah, thank you.
Further discussion on Article 1. All of your questions have been answered. Yes, sir.
Hey there, Pete Rames from 21 Moose Hollow Road. First, I want to take the opportunity to thank all parties that were involved in this for a lot of effort to bring folks together on this very important topic. Much appreciated. I have a lot of gratitude for the staff and teachers of the district who work so hard, and hope that this process reflects the value that they bring to our community. My question for you is, if this does not pass on the 29th, what kind of impact will that continue to have on our district?
So if this agreement fails and the voters don't support it, we reopen negotiations again. It'll be the third time. And we try to get an agreement that we can bring forward in the next election cycle. So we sort of back off a March voting date, with public hearings in January and deliberatives, et cetera. And so we will follow the process one more time. If I may, I think it's important that that the public understand a couple of things. So last year we negotiated with both the LEA, which represents our professional staff teachers. We also negotiated with the LSSA, which is our support staff association. And unfortunately, we weren't able to reach an agreement with the support staff, so we didn't have anything to bring forward. We're now back at the table, and we're engaged in negotiations one more time with support staff. So our goal is to have an agreement with support staff come March. And selfishly, I'd love to focus on getting one done and not have two. If we can get this one passed, we then have a 3-year deal with our teachers, and we can focus on the support staff agreement in March. But if we can't, hopefully we'll be back with 2 agreements in March to bring forward to the voters. And the other thing is to just say that there is a morale impact, right? So teachers lost really good colleagues. They saw colleagues go to other districts and receive raises, and so that strikes pretty hard to the heart for teachers. It has an impact on their ability to come in and do the best they can each and every day. So I think it's a tough situation. But I will say the staff right now is rallying through this. I think the staff on the whole is very appreciative of the hard work that went in to get where we are, and they're very optimistic that the voters will consider this and see the hard work and honor that with a positive vote. Honestly, if there's not a positive vote in October, that will be another blow to our teaching staff, and I think it will have a pretty negative impact on the overall climate of what we're able to get done in the schools when we don't have an agreement in place. And remember, this isn't the first time. There have been, in the last 10 years, multiple times where agreements have not been in place, so this just becomes one more dent in that relationship, and it's going to make it difficult for us to get done the good stuff that we want to have happen. So we really are hoping that the voters are supportive of this agreement so that we can have teachers know where they are, honor them with the raises that we've stipulated, and then focus on the support staff negotiations so that we can get a fair deal for the other people who work really hard to keep our schools clean, to keep our schools looking good, to make sure that somebody's there to answer the phone. You're not calling in to get a robot answering the phones in Litchfield. You're getting a human being who's showing care. Our food service people who are feeding 1,000 kids a day. I mean, there's a lot of hard work that goes into making sure that the schools stay operating, and so we need to focus on getting that done next.
Sir.
Dan Harrison, 95 Pinecrest. I assume not everything is settled out yet, but I wonder if you could speak to the impact of the recent state budget that passed, which significantly increases aid to Litchfield schools.
Yeah, so the question was about the recently passed state budget and the impact that was going to have. So we're still trying to sort our way through it. As you know, the governor and the legislature reached an agreement last week. I've shared with the board that we're looking at additional revenue of about $1.6 million over what we anticipated, and that's over 2 years, by the way. That's in the biennium, which is a pretty substantial amount of money. We're sorting through exactly which buckets that money is coming in. So it's been designated in a few different areas, and the state has cautioned us that the intent of some of this money is to really focus on infrastructure needs, because it's only guaranteed in this biennium. There's no guarantee going forward that that money would continue. So that's something the board is going to have to wrestle with and try to decide, how do we use this state money that's coming to invest in our schools in a way that doesn't cause a tax spike. And what I mean by that is, if we were to say, that's great, that's additional revenue, we're going to use all of it for taxpayer relief. So here's money coming from somewhere else that we're not going to have to collect at the local tax rate setting. So the tax rate goes down because now you have money coming from outside, right? But then in 2 years, that money is not maintained. The tax rate is going to spike right back up again. And I think the board's going to have to wrestle with how much of a spike do we want to have if we use it in that way. Another example is that if we took that money and steered it all toward personnel costs, we can now hire people that we haven't been able to hire, positions that we really want to have, fund the teacher agreement. And so now what happens is, again, that tax rate will go down because you're able to do these things that will be picked up by the budget in 2 years if it's not maintained, and then it spikes again. So taxpayers don't like huge increases. They don't like spikes either. So, if something is done and it results in a reduction only to cause an automatic increase, that's probably not the best thing to do for taxpayers. So it's going to be a hard conversation for the board. we're having preliminary conversations about investing in our buildings and some of the things that we need to do so that we can get things fixed and repaired. And then at the end, we'll benefit from those repairs for many years down the road, but it wouldn't pass back on to the taxpayers at that point. So that's sort of a philosophical piece. It's what the state is saying. They're trying to unencumber and so that we're not going through some big elaborate process to try to get after building aid money or facility safety improvement money. They're saying, you know what you best need, but use it to accomplish that in this window because it won't be there necessarily after that. And I think it's a pretty strong warning from the state that, this is an extra, I think it's $138 million infused into school funding, which is a big dollar, right, coming from Concord. That's a lot of money that's being dished out to schools, and we're benefiting pretty well from that. But the caution is to use it wisely, because if you spend it in a way that results in spiking or that just ends up shifting out of the taxpayers down the road, you haven't really gained what you should have. So it's a long-winded answer, and the board is literally, a week into thinking about it, and they haven't even had a discussion as a group. That'll come tomorrow night if anybody wants to join us for the board meeting, town hall at 6 o'clock, right? So, yeah. All right.
Further questions on Article 1? Hi.
Robin Corbeil, 4 Nesmith Court. I just want a little more clarification on that question. Is there no percentage of that 1.2 million that we're supposed to get that has to go back to the taxpayer?
So it comes with no strings attached. It's up to the local board. And so that's something the board's going to have to examine. Just like with the other revenue, we make predictions. We always make predictions in January for the vote in March, but then the actual dollars that come in June differ a little bit. And so, it's just a revenue stream, and it always impacts the tax rate when that gets set again, because the tax rate setting in Litchfield will be early November. And so, it's all going to be factored into that. It's like, okay, we have this much money coming from this source, this much from another source. How much then do we need from the local taxpayer? So the answer, Robin, is that it really varies, and it's up to the board to decide how they want to use it.
So I'm just confused, because at the school board meeting that I was last at, I was given the impression that that money had to be returned to the taxpayer, that it wasn't something that could be spent to offset any of this. But that's come down differently. So now it's at the liberty of the school board to decide. And is that money that's budgeted for next year, that 1.2 million would be spent for the next academic year?
So remember, the state budget is about 3 months late. So that's money for the current fiscal year.
Current year.
Yep. And again, it's more than anticipated. So it's unanticipated revenue. And so the board will have to wrestle how to use that. So,
and it's not half has to go to 1 year, half has to go from the, you could spend it all this year.
No, it's coming in 2 paychecks, right?
Okay.
So there will be so roughly $500,000 this year and $500,000 next year. It's actually greater than that. And that's why, again, we have to figure out the buckets that this goes into, because I don't know exactly how flexible they can be on it. But
And that will be discussed and voted on at school board meetings, so people who are interested
Correct.
in that should be at school board meetings for that part.
that is correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further discussion, questions on Article 1, sir?
Hi, Andrew Cutter, 6 Moose Hollow Road. Just a question on the process, right? So the special election is going to be on October 29th. The tax rate for the town, right, and for the school is set early November. Talk to us a little bit about the process, because other things that voters don't like is a third tax bill, right? So can you just clear the air on that, please?
Sure. Thank you for asking. So the first thing we had to do before we could even file with the courts is we had to put DRA on notice that we were intending to file with the courts to ask for a special meeting. So DRA was noticed, I think early July, that we were putting the petition in, and we had to wait, I can't remember, 10 days, 14 days, and then we filed with the courts. So basically, in meeting with town officials last week, our understanding is that DRA has put the tax rate setting for Litchfield to the end of the list. So If there are other communities that have also asked for a special meeting, then they've all been moved to the end of that list. So they're calculating tax rates for districts that are not in our situation first, and then they're holding off on us. The other thing is that because our election got delayed to this time in October, we've really kind of backed ourselves right up to the deadlines to make this happen. So what's going to happen is we're going to upload into the DRA portal all the information that we can, so that when we get the election results on the night of the 29th, we can literally upload that evening or the following morning, first thing, everything else that needs to be done. And then the tax rate setting will occur. I think Troy thought it was going to take about 4 or 5 days in order to happen. And then as soon as we have that, the tax collector clerk will get everything sent off to the printers, and then the tax bills will be distributed. And it's important on the town side that that get done as quickly as possible, because I think you have 30 days from the time it gets sent out to have the payment due. So, if they're sent out by, say, November 5th, 6th, something like that, then you would have 30 days. And so we're all cognizant of a couple of things. The town and the school are working together to make sure that there's one tax bill that comes out. So we don't want to send a tax bill out and then a supplemental tax bill. That's bad practice. When people pay that first tax bill, they don't want to get a second one. So we're avoiding that by making sure we work as quickly as we can to get one sent out. Honestly, you want to get it sent out well before the new year. You don't want to have this lag, because you have cash flow concerns with the town and the school that you want to make sure that you are collecting the taxes for. And nobody wants a tax bill right before the holidays either. So you want to try to get this done as quickly as you can. So we're all committed to working together to get that turned around as fast as possible. But, the reality is that it will be delayed pending the vote from the normal cycle. So normally they like to have it out the end of October or November 1st, and it may be delayed by a few days beyond that. Does that help? You're welcome.
Hey. Yes, ma'am.
Susan Seabrook, 33 James Way. I just need a little clarification on that acronym, DRA.
Thank you. So DRA is the Department of Revenue Administration, and they are the folks in Concord who set the tax rate with us. So all of the financial numbers that our business administrator runs will get uploaded to DRA, and they're a very serious group of people who, you can imagine they're setting tax rates across the state, and so they take that very seriously. They follow a very methodical process to make sure that everything is being done correctly, and so they are the ones who set that tax rate. It's all with local input. I mean, the town will put in, okay, here's what we need for revenue. The school puts in what we need for revenue, and then it all gets calculated. But they're the ones who actually set and certify that amount.
Further discussions? Article 1. Yes, ma'am.
Janine Engdahl, 43 Tanager Way. I think one, and I'll disclosure, I am a teacher in the district as well as a parent and a taxpayer. I think one important reason that I feel this should be supported is the steps that Dr. Jetty was talking about, the steps for experience within the first 15 years of your career. And by the way, there was some questions about this on social media. That is how it's done everywhere in public education, as far as I know. I've taught in 4 different states. It is set up that way in public education everywhere, as far as I know. The steps that teachers have lost in the past in Litchfield, there's, I think, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but maybe somewhere around 27 teachers who have lost steps in past years because of contracts that have failed in Litchfield, and they've gone the year or several years without a contract. Those are several years of less pay they've had, so that's a cumulative effect. That was removed from the contract and the renegotiations because it was expensive to make up those steps that they had missed. But without passing this contract now, they'll the teachers in those first 15 years will lose another step this year. So even the ones, I had not lost a step in the past, I would lose a step this year if we don't pass this one for this year. But those other teachers who had lost ones in the past, they'll be that much further behind, which is the reason why when Dr. Jetty was talking about teachers going to another district and getting $13,000 raise, I've heard $8,000, I've heard $10,000. That's because they're getting paid for their level of experience at the other districts. They're not getting paid for their level of experience in Litchfield currently because of the years they missed those steps, and they've never caught up on those. So now we're going to have a whole nother batch of teachers who will be a year behind, and that's cumulative. Year after year, they will be that year behind in their pay scale. I think that there's a lot of people who would say, why not wait till March? You failed last March, just give it a year and vote again next March. And I think my answer to that is because the teachers who were waiting to see how this was going to play out, once they know I'm not getting a step again, I can't keep having this uncertainty in Litchfield every year, they're going to be looking for jobs by March. Dr. Jetty recommended that, he talked about Litchfield wants to hire early to get the cream of the crop candidates. Same goes for the candidates. They want to interview early to get the best offers. And so if they wait till March and they missed another step this year, and they're hoping that maybe Litchfield will have a contract next year, they're going to start looking at those openings before this next election cycle. So I just wanted to point that out. I think that missing another step for Litchfield teachers could be detrimental. We lost more than a handful of teachers this last year, many of them saying it had to do with not having that step increase that they had been planning on and to have to go without a contract again. And I think we're going to compound that problem if we go this additional year without a contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions or discussion topics about Article 1? Hearing none. Before we close, I'd like to remind everyone that we don't have any pink or green or yellow ballots to return. The warrant articles discussed tonight will appear as you see them in writing. There is no next deliberative session. The voting day is on October 29th between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. At 7 p.m., I'll run outside to see if I see any runners. And if there's a runner, I'll wait. If there's no runners, we close the door at 7 p.m. With that, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, you're here by yourself.